So let's get into some of those questions because there's some interesting federal-state interactions. But first, I want to give a right of first response to any of the panelists. Anything that you've heard that you want to expand on, comment on, push back against. Alan would be very pleased if we can get into some fisticuffs. So feel free to oblige.
No, I think
I'm
keep
good.
going, yeah.
Okay. So then you mentioned, Ray, vehicle inspections, which really bridge this federal-state divide. And Bernard, you likewise talked about how states traditionally have regulated vehicle operation, whereas the federal government regulates vehicle safety at the point of first sale. And so as I think through a list of I want to say edge cases, scenarios. We're saying corner cases now, right? Because corners are more complex than edges.
Scenarios
It's
is
like how we went
fine.
from areas to spaces because that's 3D and high tech. Yeah, language is tough. But I want to get into some of these border questions that seem to overlap the roles. So vehicle inspection, vehicle maintenance, sales of used vehicles, vehicle updates over the air or otherwise. Data collection from vehicles. Who has principal authority in issues like these?
You know, so that's I'll take a stab at it. You know, states right now across the country, I think only about 16 states require some form of safety inspection in order to get your vehicle registered. California does not, and we're in the majority. A lot of states do not require that for a number of reasons. You know, typically you take your vehicle in to be inspected, and all they do is check the brake lights, check to make sure the blinkers work, that kind of thing. And the next day it may not work. And so, you know, there's a question on, you know, how effective that safety inspection is. That issue about maintenance of the vehicle and whether or not all of the sensors and the software and all of the driving, the decision-making items that are in your vehicle and the proper maintenance of that is a tough one. Because for us, what we require is that the manufacturer certifies that the vehicle is safe to be operating on public roadways. And then the onus is on the owner of the vehicle to ensure that safety carries out. And so the proper maintenance, making sure it's in proper working order is really up to the owner of the vehicle. And so in a deployment standpoint, if a manufacturer is deploying it in a fleet environment, say in a ride-sharing fleet environment, then yeah, they own the vehicle. They're responsible for the maintenance of that vehicle. They're responsible for ensuring all of the vehicles in the fleet are in good working order. When it's sold to a private party, you know, it becomes a little bit more murky. But from our standpoint, we just want to ensure that those vehicles are safe for operating on the roadways.
Yeah.
So it's interesting being on a panel with someone else who knows my statutes as well as I do. So I think I would say maybe there's not much difference from the way things are now. There's a couple things that we're looking at. I hate to use this as a reference, but the Takata airbag situation, right? At the core of that very unfortunate and terrible recall situation is the fact that the propellant degrades over time and becomes very excited. And so we are asking ourselves the basic question right now, what research would we want to undertake to understand how that applies to computer systems, let's say, or how it applies to camera systems. Usually late Friday nights in my office, we're talking about the windshield scenario, let's say, where you drive down the road these days, you get a rock hits you in the windshield, you might get a spider crack, you had to take it to some guy, you really want to stay away from the dealership because it's about 5 times what it cost you, you know, from the auto glass guy who comes to your door. Can't really do that as effectively anymore if you have stereo vision or a camera radar system or something else mounted to the windshield, which is where I suspect my insurance friends would like it mounted. And so we're trying to figure out, is there some work that we need to do to figure out sort of self-diagnostics, how that really works, how would you actually validate that, and kind of working in partnership with FMCSA, actually, and one of the issues is the kind of inspection at roadside. So even for the light vehicle side, Bernard mentioned there's not, I think it's actually very few states have that left. On the commercial side, it's a needed part of the business. And so reminding everybody we're still at, N of 0. We have, roughly less than 1,000 test vehicles running out there. So a lot of this is sort of pontificating and spitballing, but presumably manufacturers would have the same telltale lights, the same kind of things they have now when safety systems that are especially critical systems aren't operational. So that, from an inspection standpoint, maybe not much different. Your data question is interesting because there's a lot of churn around data, whose data, and all this kind of stuff. I think that still has to sort itself out.